I'm a touch late. I'm a touch late today. Usually I go live at noon. It's like 12:30. Not the end of the world. Okay, let me fix. Ooh, almost dropped you. Fix my camera touch. Turn it on to all messages. There we go. Whew, I'm hot. My face is all red. I got a little bit of sun yesterday, but also like it's like 68 degrees outside right now, which to me, from being like high mountain desert, like that'll be like really cool in like fall, but like I'm hot. I'm overheated because I'm like it should be like 20 degrees outside right now. Why is it 68 all of a sudden, right? It was no creeping in. So yeah, I had to run down to the bottom pasture and feed baby Delilah and all of that stuff. And she was up in the like closer to the house when I came in to make her bottle, and I was like, huh. The sound of the bells means all the goats have gone down to the bottom pasture. So now I gotta go down there, is what I was up to. And my cup's a little dusty. I think I meant to rinse it, so I'm just gonna give it the dress clean. Because that's how real people roll. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna have some tea here just as a reminder, and then I'm going to answer questions. So I always make my tea first, just gives me time to settle in. Today I'm gonna have some, I've had it before, some of my Wild Tree Purple Moonlight White tea cake from Yunnan sourcing. That I like white teas, I like purple teas, so this one is a favorite, and it's like nice and aged. And I got my little box here today, and this cup my husband got me, and the little cake separator that he got me. So that's what we're gonna do. Having tea before I start answering questions just, lets me settle in. I don't need that big of a piece. I need to get a little tray for specifically breaking my like tea cakes up on, but right now I'm just gonna do it raw straight into the cup. This little thing just helps me get into the layers. Before I would just smash and break it like a monster. But now I have something that kind of helps me flake some layers off. That's probably more than enough. And then I'm probably going to go actually in the 175 range for my water temperature with this. This is like a little shank is what that is. Secret little shank that looks kind of like a rolling pin when it's put back together. So I'm going to get my water going because some hot tea should cool me down. No, I'll be alright. So what I say I was going to do 165, I think. Nah, I'm going to do 170. Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, I just have had a week of ups and downs, and just like any other human, I suppose, and making like good headway, weird headway with mold detox, and like I'm getting right now I'm working on getting like basically like my pituitary function back. And part of that has been a little rough because once you start like stimulating your pituitary again, it tells your adrenals to make cortisol again, and I'm like crack-a-lacking all over the place. But I have to be careful because I'll push myself too much. I'll be like, oh, I have all this energy, and I have to stop myself from spending the energy, and I fail at it every time. Fucking overspend every time, But yeah, I've just kind of been, I don't know, we got a fresh batch of baby chicks yesterday, which that's been chaos for everybody. There was like a lady at our local like feed store like freaking out about like, when are the chicks gonna be here, and like, and I feel bad because like by all means get chickens, but know that it's gonna be like depending on the breed, you got 6 to 9 months before they lay eggs. And I watched this happen in 2020, 2022, where people like were like, oh my god, I have to like homestead right now, and that's fine. But I also watched the great sell-off. So for all of the people that are paying, I feel bad, an arm and a leg for chickens right now, right? Probably by this winter, you're going to be able to buy chickens for a song because people are going to be tired of them, or they're like, now they're not laying. Like they'll lay just in time to stop laying because of winter, right? Like, and then you can snatch them up real cheap from people when that happens, right? And so, but yeah, So we just been doing that, and we have chickens already and a bunch of quail. It was time to refresh. I don't really buy chicks every year. Usually it's like once every 2 years, and sometimes I try to go after like older pullets versus the babies. But this year I wanted two specific breeds, one that I used to raise and one that I'm interested in, which is the I used to have speckled Sussex all the time, and then I got Buckeyes, and I'm actually pretty interested in crossing them. And I used to do a lot of chicken stuff. A lot seems like a lifetime ago, but I used to. Uh, yeah, a lot don't consider the commitment, right? And like everything that goes into it. But yeah, for us, they're also like really big at like they like deep free range here, so they're like taking care of ticks and stuff for us too. I have one duck, and I know you're not supposed to have one duck, but there was a gay love triangle. There's no other way to say it. There was two male ducks and one male rooster that had been excluded from the other chickens. They just didn't like him for whatever reason, even though he's a nice rooster. Although I guess he wasn't so nice in the end. Um, and these two bachelor ducks and this one rooster, like, they were just together. And, like, sometimes, even though they were a different species, we'd watch them try to mate each other, like a dominance thing. And this one duck and the rooster really got along. And eventually there was a war between the duck and the rooster, and we found the aftermath. And, like, I was like, all right. And now the rooster and the duck just, like, exist together. And I'm like, you killed him. You killed your third. No, I plan on I plan on getting a bunch of Muscovy ducks, even though they're not technically ducks. People call them ducks. They're just a different type of breed that happens to look like a duck. But I'm really interested in the Muscovies just because they're so basically feral, and they can like deeply take care of themselves, and they hatch out eggs like crazy, and they're super tasty. They're like the red meat of poultry. And so I like that a lot better than like the average duck. I've been looking into him. His name should be Kane. Yeah, Kane the rooster. He's so beautiful, and I don't know why. Every now and then he'll steal a couple bitches from the other roosters. He'll get a couple women to hang out with him, but he won't sleep in the coop, so he loses them. They're like, no, I'm going home, dude. Like, and he won't go in there. But he's tough, man. We've had that rooster for like 3, 4 years, and he like lives up in this pine tree. And I'm like, all right, man, do your thing. He comes down for food and all that stuff. Even in the wintertime, I mean, he is tough. Like, but that's just what he wants. Somebody said I had a duck do that. They're kind of aggressive. Mine were Muscovy. Yeah, they can just be aggressive, man. Ducks and animals, like, nature is metal. Like, people like to imagine, like, super serene, like, calm, lovey-dovey nature, right? But I'm like, actually, it wants to rip your face off, maybe try to mate you while it's doing it, and then take your women. Right? Like that is how most of it works. Somebody said they just made my magnesium oil. I'm glad that it's super easy. It's literally just magnesium flakes and water. People overcomplicate stuff all the time. But yeah, it's just spring. Yesterday I got a bed of carrots planted and thought I was gonna die. I was like, oh, just from clearing. It's a pretty big bed, to be fair, and I am constantly battling invasive blackberries, so it's like you can't just go out there and garden. You have to be like, no matter how much you cut them back the year before and keep on top of them, they're just like, oh, I'm back. And so I'm like out there, I have to like cut back a jungle before I can even prep the bed again, and it's crazy. But the books behind me, these are all my books. Oh, these are all like specific like identification type books for my area, for like my bioregion. So these are all like my common ways books and my common herbs books that like talk about like all of the processes of like how to make something, like from like a deep method stance. Like, you use any herbs with this versus just following a basic recipe. This tells you how to do the base of it and use whatever herb you want. And then all of these books are all about like the individual plants that are like super common and safe to work with in your area and all their constitutes, and you can put them together if you want to make things. And then these ones are all just like super specific, like this one's pretty cool. Oh, I'm gonna drop them all. This one I really like. It's an old school one. My tea's ready. And this one won't apply to almost anybody watching unless you live here. I don't really buy herbalism books. I buy books for my bioregion. And this is a USDA book put out by the Forest Service for alpine and subalpine vegetation. I live in subalpine forest, which is pretty rare actually in the United States. And so it's all just about like the plants and stuff that grow here. And a lot of them are kind of rare. Like they have to be like, I'm just going to stick that there. And then there. And then there. There we go. They will fall over. So yeah, I always suggest getting books from your bioregion, right? Like if you're looking at stuff like that. But I know it's so funny. I'm like, I don't buy herbalism books, but I have herbalism books for sale. But I mean, for me, it's like I'm more interested in like learning what plants I have around me and then discovering if they want to have a relationship with me or not, right? Okay, so let me have this first taste of tea. It's a little. That's not the best filter, so I've got a little bit of tea leavings in here. Ooh, that's super tasty. I really like Moonlight Whites. I like white tea cake. They don't make them a whole lot because most people aren't aging white tea, but it's nice. I really like them. Okay, so if you have a question, say question, and I will do my best to answer. And I totally forgot in all my jabbering that this Sunday, just to let you know, just to let members know, I will have my members Q&A again, except for it's just going to be for members. I thought that there was a setting in here, and it just didn't work, where I could make it to where only members could like ask questions, but everybody was allowed to watch, and it was chaos. So next Sunday, the Sunday coming up, will be the Q&A for members, and that will only be for members to watch. But then I'll upload it for everybody to watch, so it's okay. Okay, so question: can you discuss the sickness your husband had from vaping? Yeah, he had they call it like manganese madness, or though he wasn't like as bad as like some people get. Basically, you need manganese in your body, but when you it's like a super duper tiny amount. It's like a microscopic amount needed, right? And we typically get enough from our food and things like that. But if it's like really heavy in like your well water, or like let's say you vape all the time and those fucking coils and those things are full of heavy metals, and one thing that they use a lot when they're making even the ceramic coils is manganese, and so you're inhaling that, and it makes you just aggressive. They call it manganese madness. Like when people get really bad, they can murder people. Like, I mean, he wasn't that bad, but like it was bad. He's watching right now. He's the admin blocking people. But it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, and ultimately, like, you don't really want to necessarily detox from manganese, right? Like, to an extent, it's more like you need to support your detox pathways that allow it to go out, and make sure that you have a lot of like magnesium and iron and things going in so it balances itself. And you kind of just have to remove the exposure source, right? But yeah, it's a problem, and I think that we're going to start seeing a lot of like way more mental health issues, and like lots of Alzheimer's and stuff like that from people who constantly vape. Hasn't been around long enough, guys. Hasn't been around long enough. Just smoke some weed. God, like I told my son, and I wish he wouldn't smoke cigarettes, but I told him I would rather have you smoking real tobacco than a vape pen. Straight up. And so he switched, so now he smokes cigarettes, and I hate the fucking smell of it when he's around me doing it, but like I'd rather have him do that than vape. Okay, so question: how do you feel about lion's mane? I have to ask this question for 3 of your lives. Can you please answer? Thank you. Yeah, you gotta remember, I have hundreds of comments going by, and if I don't answer your question, there might be an answer in my other lives, or I might have videos about it. Definitely do some digging. Lion's mane is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I really like lion's mane mushroom for neurocognitive support, for repairing nerve endings throughout your entire body, not just in your brain. Thank you so much for the super, Helena. I'm going to get your last name wrong. Westerdahl? Maybe I didn't. But yeah, I like lion's mane mushroom. I think it tastes like shit, personally. I don't think she tastes very good. It tastes a lot like, they try to say it's like a seafood alternative. I'm like, do not eat seafood that tastes like that. But some people really like it, and I like that it's food-based, right? And so it's relatively safe to use on a consistent basis. It's pretty good just for neural support, and I really like her paired with rosemary, because rosemary has the capacity to increase blood flow to your brain, and actually can get past the blood-brain barrier, which is really rare for things in general, because your brain really protects itself. So when used in conjunction with the lion's mane, I feel like it really helps like improve neural pathways and make the compounds more accessible to your brain. Um, okay, question. Do you use red light therapy? Evening is okay. Yeah, I do use red light therapy. Evening's all right. Like, if that's all you like have access to, but also like morning is fantastic because red light therapy can be kind of energizing. But if you don't feel overly energized from it, there's no problem using it at night. Make sure that it's a decent device. I also like when it comes with the infrared lighting and you can do both, right? Like I like to use them together because the infrared gets deeper into your body. There's some pretty interesting studies on red light therapy in the brain for Alzheimer's, or like concussion, TBI, any of that type of stuff, cognitive like failing. There's red light therapy has been shown to improve eyesight, mitochondrial function, recovery time. There's no real downfall to red light therapy. Question: my daughter had her entire family have ear infections. Any ideas what could cause that? She probably had some sort of bacterial infection, cold or something that had an affinity for settling there. Like you can get earaches from like debris in there, sometimes moisture, but also it's really common to get them from like bacterial. So if they all got it, it was like some sort of cold or virus that just liked to settle in the ear canal type area, right? Um, Question: husband has prostate cancer using fireweed and self heal. What's your thoughts on SEACT, the 8 blend? I mean, it's been around a long time. It's not something that I chose to work with when I had cancer. I feel like it was sensationalized a lot, and they made a lot of money off of it. They pretended like they gave it away for free, but like ultimately there was a lot of money made off of it, and it may or may not work. I would personally consider looking into LDN. It is a medication, but it's been around for a long time, and you take it in like really tiny amounts, low dose naltrexone. It's pretty amazing for cancer support. It's what I would choose to do alongside things like turkey tail mushroom would be fantastic to add into that stack. Also, like high dose vitamin C has been shown pretty effective against cancer, you know. And if it's prostate, I would work on getting like all soy out of his diet. Right, I would work on resolving that estrogen dominance that he's probably living with if you haven't checked for that. Cancer can have like receptor cells because remember it's like from your body. So like if they do or don't know if it's like estrogen positive, progesterone positive is possible, but estrogen dominant, estrogen positive is more likely, meaning that that cancer uses estrogen as food, right? Which is like estrogen's amazing, but too much is just food for cancer, basically. Question: my skin gets red bumps, dry, stinging feeling when I use most makeup, shampoos, skincare products. Do you know what tests to take? That is just straight up. You're allergic to the chemicals in most of that stuff. And a lot of it has essential oils in it these days. You're probably going to have to find something mineral based. Like, if you haven't already tried like a super clean mineral based makeup, I would consider doing that. You could do specific testing for the ingredients in the products, but honestly, your body's telling you that it doesn't want that stuff on it anymore. Right. And so finding a way to go more natural about it might probably be the best way versus trying to find like necessarily a workaround. But if you did want to get a test for it, you'd probably want to see an allergist for them to do like a skin prick test. Um, how do you treat a persistent cough? It's been 3 weeks and it started with a cold. Well, I really like working with mullein infusion for this, especially if it's just kind of like a dry, nagging cough. You might have something like any anti-spasmodic herbs too, like even like skullcap. Sometimes when we have a dry cough, usually what it is you've got a little nerve misfiring in there sometimes, but you could also have like residual gunk just stuck down deep without knowing it. Just depends on if you're coughing up crap or not, but sometimes it's just stuck in there. But when 2020 happened and we got the thing that went around, we ended up with like a little bit of a like a naggy cough, but we got it to go away with working with mullein and things like that. If it's real bad, you could start working with like of course you could do like a thyme tea if you feel like there's a bunch of gunk in there to get out. You could also work with like tiger's milk mushroom. That's more about resolving like asthma and opening up your airways, but that might need to happen anyways. Thank you so much for the super Victoria Peterson. Okay, so Is ghost pipe tincture safe to use for back pain, or is there a better remedy? I mean, you can. It's pretty unethical to harvest ghost pipe. It's like endangered in the wild. It's a plant that kind of like steals its energy from like the plants around it, and it comes up and people are like, it's a mushroom, but it's not, right? And yeah, I mean, ghost pain can help. I mean, ghost pipe can help with pain, but it's pretty strong. Most people, like for me, if I was gonna work with it, I better be in like some pretty bad like cancer pain. Right. Like you could use it for that. And if you already have it, you could try it. But do know that if you have any mental health issues, like if you're prone to like mania or like schizophrenia or anything like that runs heavily in your family, that it can trigger that. Like it's not a benign plant for pain, right? It's something that you work with like when it's serious, right? Um, but you can also use like a topical like pain salve that you make with like cayenne balm. You could get a strong arnica gel would probably help. It just depends on what's causing the pain. Now, assuming you've seen chiropractors, you might need a better one. You might need a medical massage. Maybe you're really low in B12 or magnesium or calcium. All these things can cause bone pain as well. Check your K1 and your K2 levels. I'm all about pushing you to find the underlying cause, right? I know, and I get it. I live with like hip and back pain issues, right? And it's something that I constantly have to work on, you know. Somebody says how to take brewer's yeast infusion. I just drink it. um, I just drink my brewer's yeast infusion. I usually, it's not bad warm. It's kind of like a tangy broth. If you're, I mean, you might not like the flavor, but if it tastes like absolutely fucking horrendous to everybody in your house, it's probably more to do with the quality of the brewer's yeast than what brewer's yeast should taste like. Because it kind of just tastes like a tangy chicken broth to me. Question. I have a friend who has a genetic mutation that prevents them from synthesizing or absorbing collagen. Any suggestions? So, vitamin C is how we, well, and glutathione is how we synthesize. Well, glutathione is more like how we recycle vitamin C, and then we use vitamin C to like cause collagen synthesis. And I know a lot about this because I live with genetic mutations that prevent me from uptaking vitamin C. And so they might want to look into like high dose vitamin C, but also like supporting their glutathione pathways. Like you could straight up just take glutathione, right? Like depending on the mutation, obviously, like this is secondhand. So I don't know what the implications for that are. Sometimes you can't take something or another because they might not be processing right. But ultimately, they're going to have to learn about the mutation and how it impacts the body and like how is your body compensating, right? And collagen production always comes down, like when you die of scurvy, what happens is your body stops producing collagen and it breaks down and your old wounds open up and it's fucking horrible. And so it sounds like they would benefit doing a bunch of research just in that realm, right? Because their body is needing that vitamin C to make the collagen synthesis happen, alongside of like glutathione is important because it helps your body recycle vitamin C. A lot of people in the vitamin C realms who are super into high dose, a lot of people in those groups will tell you that like your body doesn't hold on to vitamin C at all and you'll fucking die of scurvy instantly, and that's not true. You got about 10 to 25 to 30 days depending on your body and depending on your glutathione stores that can recycle the ascorbic acid. Question. I know spearmint is good for Herbalism. Is there anything topical to be used with it? I don't think I know what that one is. Do you mean like, is that the one where you sweat a lot? If that's the one where you sweat a lot, and I think it might be, topically, you could work with a black drawing salve that doesn't have bloodroot in it. But basically just like a charcoal type salve topically would be super handy for that. It just helps like dry the area up, but also sometimes if, and that's just the sweating one, right? Like, but also sometimes people who have that like don't realize that they just have like really really depleted minerals. And if it's right, and if I'm wrong, I could be talking about something completely different than you're experiencing. But for people who sweat too much, usually it's a symptom of not having enough electrolytes, you know, like sodium, magnesium, potassium, and then your body just dumps water because it can't hold on to it. Like you actually become more dehydrated if you need salt. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but you aren't full of water, you're full of salt water. And if you don't have enough sodium and electrolytes in your body, you can't hold on to it and you just sweat and sweat and sweat. It can also be a sign of like nervous system dysregulation as well. Um, So, question, any tinctures for unexplained infertility? No, I mean, you could, the unexplained part is hard, but honestly, when it comes to fertility, your body just needs deep, 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 deep nutrition. You're not going to be able to force your body to like create another life with something like a tincture or a supplement. And I'm not saying that you can't encourage fertility, but I would look into like the Weston Price Foundation and see what like deeply remineralizing and eating like tons of nourishing food does to your body. Because the same way women stop bleeding when they starve themselves, like eventually that happens, we also become infertile when we're like super malnourished. And what's really insidious about our current reality is you can look not malnourished while being really malnourished, right? Just because we have weight on our body doesn't mean that we're not malnourished. And that's something that I would look into doing and like just look into considering, right? Like even if you feel like you're eating really well, it just take a look at the like why doesn't your body feel safe enough to conceive? And it could be something that you can't fix. That's a real possibility, but just looking at the deeper why might be pretty empowering. um Question, I have PCOS and severe back pain when I have periods. Any suggestions? Yeah, you could start doing things like chickweed tincture, chickweed infused oil, chickweed infusions, chickweed infused castor oil packs. Chickweed's really fantastic for dissolving cysts. You know, and PCOS is like tons of ovarian cysts, right? But also look into the connection between like estrogen dominance and PCOS and even endo, right? I mean, that's a completely different thing, but for anybody listening. And now, I don't know. I know there's like a lot of like war right now being like there's no such thing as estrogen dominance for women. And I'm like, there is. Of course, estrogen is the main hormone in our body, but you're not supposed to have this much estrogen and like this much progesterone. They're supposed to be pretty close together, right? Like there should be points in time where you have more progesterone and less estrogen. So when you constantly have high estrogen at all points of your cycle, that's estrogen dominance. And don't let anybody tell you that it's normal to constantly be that way. It's just that our fucking foods are full of phytoestrogens, right? Soy lecithins, BPA, plastics, all that kind of shit. Um, Question, what to do to bring face swelling down from the bee sting? Obviously, you've got to do something to calm your immune reaction down. Like, if you've got Claritin, Benadryl, any of that stuff, don't be afraid to take it. Like, I'm not one of those herbalists who don't do that type of stuff. If you happen to have some Chinese skullcap tincture on hand, by all means, nettle infusion is good. Topically, you could do like just straight up some raw meat on there. I know that sounds funny, but it's pretty fantastic for acting as a poultice. You could do mud, you could do a charcoal pack, a clay pack. Plantain, not the banana, but the weed that grows in your yard is pretty good too. Question, what book would best to learn more herbalism? You know, you could just step outside your door. Now hear me out. That phone you're on is powerful. Now I don't want you just to rely on an identification app, but what would happen if you stepped outside and started paying attention to the plants that were growing around you in your yard, in your neighborhood, in your parks? Now you might not always be able to harvest them, but you can be like, "Who are you?" Take a picture, figure out what it is with one of the plant ID apps or a Google lookup search, confirm that's what it is, and then start learning about like the medicinal properties of it if it has any. Sometimes plants don't want to work with people and it's pretty apparent because they're like fucking poison. Other times you're like, wow, this has been used as a food for a long time. And then just start writing that in a cheap 99-cent school-bound spiral notebook that you can get. Right, you know, and then suddenly you have your own herbalism book and you have a powerful herbalism book because it's all the plants that are growing around you. And we always do better working with herbs that are in our bioregion than otherwise, right? I know it's crazy because you could also go buy my herbalism books, but ultimately that's like the most powerful way. And then you get curious, you get outside, you learn your environment, you're just way more connected in that way, right? Um, okay, any teas or herbs for any recommendations for healing stage 4 metastatic breast cancer? That's a hard one. You know, it goes right back to most breast cancer is estrogen positive. Right, that's why they put people on estrogen blockers and stuff like that, you know. And so, you know, that's a place to start. Turkey tail mushroom in large doses, like tincture, tea, capsules, whatever, however you can get it into you, right? And then looking into LDN research trust support group, I think is what it's called. Trust or Foundation. I always mix it up, but it's really fantastic for cancer. It just, I don't know, it's an immune modulator, you know, and it's definitely something that I would be looking into. And what's crazy is it helps so much with pain that I don't know why they're not using it in the US. Well, I probably know why, because it's cheap and super accessible, right? But it's really amazing for pain management too, beyond the fact that it helps your body like see what's happening. The tricky part about cancer and the thing that people forget is that it is your body. It's not some foreign entity that you have caught or has invaded you. It's your own cells that have mutated and then replicated. So your immune system doesn't really notice it, and so it just goes unchecked, right? Um, and so when you work with things like LDN, which deeply stimulate and regulate the immune system, and turkey tail mushrooms, all of a sudden your body is like, oh, what's that? We should pay attention to this little area right here, you know? But yeah, okay, let me scroll back here. I know I'm always missing anybody. Question: which part of the chickweed plant should I consume for PCOS? Where can I buy your books? You can my daughter's not admitting right now, so maybe my husband will see that. Yeah, he'll drop my shop link. But it's also just sheesofthewoods.org, and you'll find my books and stuff like that. You can use all parts of the above ground chickweed plant. And you can use most varieties that are true chickweeds, because some will have like the mousier variety and some will have the classic variety. And spring is the time to start looking for chickweed. She likes to grow in like disturbed areas, but also under like tree thickets, anywhere that likes to hold on to moisture, although she doesn't really want to be wet, if that makes sense. It's like just kind of damp under there. Excuse me. Okay, so raw carrot salad for pushing out the estrogen. Yeah, I mean, raw carrots don't push out the estrogen. They do the same thing that like beans or like soaked oats overnight do, where they bind to your bile and then you shit it out, but your hormones are in that bile. So basically, if you're not eating enough fiber, and particularly fibers that have an affinity to binding to your bile, like beans, oats, carrots, those things have a real affinity to binding to bile. And then when it binds, you shit it out, it leaves, because your hormones are constantly cycling through and back up into your liver. And so if you're not eating any of that, these hormones just build and build and build and build. And so you can also like become toxic with other things in that way. Like the main way that I am dealing with getting the molds out of my body is taking a shit every day. Right, like, but also like pissing, because some of them are water soluble. But the fat soluble molds that I'm dealing with, like, I'm not talking about black mold, although it correlates as well. I'm just working with a lot of binders, and a lot of them are food related. So I go to the bathroom every day, and I know every time I go to the bathroom, I'm getting rid of some of that toxin from my body. You know, I also really like chamomile. People overlook chamomile for estrogen dominance. She really opens up the estrogen detox pathways and directly opposes estrogen. And people were like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "Yeah, but women have been drinking chamomile for thousands of years. It's one of the few herbs that doctors will tell you is safe for babies and during pregnancy, right? Like it's been around for a very long time, and it hasn't killed us by helping us regulate our estrogen. I kind of think to an extent beyond like the exposure and toxins that we have in general from our society. I think women have stopped doing things that they may not have ever known that help them regulate their estrogen levels in their body, just by proxy of having that as part of your culture. You know, whether it's you drink a lot of chamomile tea, or your culture ate a ton of beans, or you did this stuff, you were naturally regulating those things in your body, and we've really fallen away from a lot of that, you know. Okay, April has helped me so much with all of her wisdom. I love her. I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you. My brain's like, that's a question. Wasn't a question. Question: is barley flour good? Yeah, I love barley. I eat a lot of barley. This is a barley stalk on my neck, right? You know, I'm really into the grains for me that were like a part of like my culture. You know, barley, wheat, oats was like a huge thing. And I know that like most people in the US who are gluten intolerant, you know, you're just fucking toxic chemical intolerant, right? It's so crazy how many people like in the US can't eat flour or anything at all. And then they go to a different country and they're like, it doesn't bother me here. And I'm like, yeah, that's crazy shit. Super crazy, you know. But yeah, I like barley a lot. I particularly like pearl barley and like soup and stuff like that. I like how chewy it is. But yeah. Okay, question. Trauma made me fear a lot of things. Everything is better. Will time, even if things, but yeah, will time help? Okay, my brain got stuck on your sentence. Yeah, time will help, but you also have to like heal your nervous system, right? Like time doesn't heal wounds if we don't do shit to face the wounds or to like accept it. But also, the biggest thing about trauma that I think is a mistake is people are always like, oh, you work real hard, you resolve it, and then you're a better person, and now you can move on from your trauma. Absolute bullshit. What you need to do is accept the fact that it has impacted your life, that it is a part of who you are now, and that you have to make room for that instead of trying to shove it away and make it all perfect and better in a way so now you're that person before it happened again. That's never going to happen. And I watch people suffer immensely as they constantly like try to remove their trauma versus accepting it and understanding it, right? Um, and I say that as a person who's been through a shit fuck ton of trauma, like a huge amount, right? Like a crazy, terrifying, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy type of trauma. And the thing that helped me the most was facing my own shit, facing my own patterns, even seeing my role in it. And that can be hard because we live in a culture right now that tells us like if you've been traumatized, you're perpetually a victim and it's somebody else's fault. And by all means, if somebody physically or emotionally abused us or hurt us in some way, whatever the situation is, they definitely have, culpability in that. But we also have to like ask like what was our part in it, right? And I think that we get shamed away from doing that because of the victim culture. But when we don't explore it from all angles, we can't understand even how it impacted us. And the dangerous part is we can't figure out how to not do it again. Like if we're a person, let's say, that gets really abused by a partner, gets just beat the shit out of or emotionally abused or something like that, and then the next person we picked is just as abusive, they're an asshole and they're a piece of shit, but also you never examined your role in the first abusive situation, so you didn't see your patterns and you got right back into another abusive situation. And that doesn't make it your fault. Nobody ever has the right to hurt you, and this is just one context of what can cause trauma, right? But it's definitely a factor that I think impacts a lot of people, right? And again, I say that as a person who lives with a huge amount of trauma, and while I'm not liable for the things that people did to me, a lot of my decisions led to a lot of that trauma, at least to the situation that I ended up in, right? Like, and so I can't not take responsibility for that aspect of it. And it doesn't mean that you have to be like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit, I should have known. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's like I have to have enough grace and understanding for myself and acceptance and like empathy to be like, oh, I'm sorry, hun, like you feel that way, you're terrified right now, so you did that, you did this or you did that behavior, and it like continued this thing. And unless you have compassion for yourself, you'll never re-regulate your nervous system. So sorry, that was a big tangent about it, but it's the truth, and I've come a long way. For those of you who don't know, and you don't have to be following me from like a decade ago to know, I was on disability for CPTSD, which means a ton of bad shit happened to me, for a decade. I couldn't really function. They put me on benzos. They're like, this will make you feel normal. It didn't. It just made me feel numb and no fear, right? It doesn't actually solve anything. And then one day I just decided to take myself off benzos, and that started like 3 years of just fucking brutal withdrawal and facing my own shit and my own part in it and ripping myself apart and ripping my marriage apart. Not in a bad way, but like being like, that's fucked up. We can't do that anymore. I'm fucked up. You're fucked up. This is all fucked up, right? Like, and just ripping into myself. And I got myself off of disability. I do not have anxiety anymore. I do not have, and it's not as easy as it sounds. It was one of the fucking hardest things I've ever done in my life, but it gave me my life back. So, I wouldn't want to go back. I would choose to do it again and again and again because I'd be dead by now. Or you can die without dying. You know what I mean? But yeah. Question, what do you recommend for tinnitus, please? I've talked about this quite a lot in the past and other things. Tinnitus is hard because there's so many causes. First of all, you need to do a spit-based cortisol test. Is your cortisol really high in the morning or really high at night, really low? What's going on with your cycles? That was a big thing for me. It was my cortisol. I had like really dangerous like HPA axis dysfunction, like close to an adrenal crisis situation, right? It also could be a magnesium deficiency, could be a B12 or a B1 deficiency. You could also have like a reactivated EBV infection, which is Epstein-Barr virus. Other people call it mono. You don't have to get mono to have it. A lot of people are just born with it because like your parents or their parents or their parents or beyond them had mono, and then it just passes on through the womb, you know. But it likes to settle in the thyroid and this whole like canal type area, and it can cause tinnitus, and working on lowering those EBV loads can lower it. But I would check the cortisol and the vitamins first, right? Because EBV also loves cortisol. So anything it can do to like, it's like it's food. Like anything it does to stress you out, like make your ears go, ooh, is going to be like causing that issue. You know, my tinnitus is totally gone, by the way. Question, is marshmallow root tincture safe for a 3-year-old? You know, 3-year-old's pretty young for a tincture, but you sure could make a marshmallow root infusion. They don't, it kind of tastes like a tortilla chip. You know, to me, it tastes like a tortilla chip, like a super good warm tortilla chip is what it tastes like to me. So you might be able to get them to drink it. You could then blend it up with like some fruit juice or make it into popsicles. I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable working with marshmallow that way than I would a tincture. And honestly, a tincture of marshmallow root is a little moot point. I'm not saying it doesn't have benefits, but like there are none of the mucinogenic, can't believe I nailed that word, the slimy properties aren't there. The slimy properties aren't available in a tincture. So all the gut healing and anti-inflammatory stuff that you're primarily after with mallow root isn't in a tincture. And so depending on what you're wanting to use it for, it's almost not even worth the risk using a tincture with a kid that young just because it doesn't give you what you need. Question. Oh, they said their tinnitus comes and goes. That's probably cortisol. Question. What are your thoughts on a red algae for osteoporosis? I like vitamin K1 and K2 better. I'm not against algae to an extent, but algae has like this precursor of B12 in it that ends up depleting your B12 because you need B12 to turn the precursor of B12 into B12. Right? Like same thing with like spirulina and stuff. And but like if I had osteoarthritis, I would be working more aggressively with like vitamin C, grass-fed gelatin, you know, and I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the algae. Not that I'd never use them, but like, and I do seaweed, obviously, but like it's not like a constant everyday thing for me, right? But also people are really deficient in K1 and K2. K1 comes from like well cooked leafy greens, and K2 comes from animal fats, the butters, milk, things like that. And people are super deficient. And there's been studies where people have reversed their osteo, right? Because of like getting the K1 and K2 back into their diet. But some people have genetics where you need more. Like I eat the shit out of all that stuff and I still have really low levels all the time, so I have to supplement with it. Um, Question. People say fasting helps regeneration of cells. They're talking about like cellular turnover, and I guess it does, but it also jacks up your cortisol levels, which actually ends up causing a lot of atrophy in your muscles and your organs. And assuming you sleep 8 hours a night, you aren't eating for 8 hours, right? Like, I'm not a fan of fasting. It causes a huge amount of stress on the body. And by stress, I mean literally stress hormone. When you don't eat, it like jacks up your cortisol so it can rob glucose from your muscle. And don't try to tell me it takes it from your fat, because that is it. That is like a long process to happen, right? And it doesn't happen instantly at all, and it's always going after your muscle. Because hear me out, there is not a moment, not a single second, that your brain does not require glucose to function. In fact, your body will do things like give you type 2 diabetes, so the glucose is always present and always really high, so it has access to it. There's even this theory called glucose steal, where people blame it on carbohydrates, but like really what it is like something has damaged your glucose regulation and uptake for your body, so your body's like, fuck, I am now going to make this person fucking insulin resistant so the brain, can take all the glucose out of your blood, right? But it never needs it all, so your blood sugar gets really high. And that seems unrelated, but the reason that your body will instantly start eating itself when you're fasting or when you're really stressed out too by proxy, and even though it's not doing it necessarily on purpose, is because it uses cortisol to degrade your muscles to provide glucose to your brain. So, if your liver runs out of glucose in the middle of the night and you're not fasting, it will start robbing it from your body. And yeah, it can cause cellular turnover in that way, but it's not a healthy way. It's not a healthy way for it to happen. If you really want to support chronological aging, look into supporting your ATP function, which is like get out into the fucking sun. You literally have like a form of photosynthesizing in your body, and we are not mole people, but we now live like it, and it has just huge ramifications. But yeah, oh my god, the keto diets, don't even get me started. And you'll end up like, by the way, just to go on a fucking rant about that, what happens when you're constantly starving yourself of carbohydrates or food in general, when the cortisol is ramped up and eating your muscles, it inevitably ends up putting protein in your bloodstream, and then protein is really hard on your kidneys. So people with that live in constant state of ketosis, any of that shit, you end up first of all, your body ends up way too acidic. You get amino acid imbalances, but also you start really hurting your kidneys because all that muscle breakdown of your body desperately trying to keep your brain running shunts fucking protein into your kidneys, which is really bad for them, by the way. If you've ever taken a urine test, that's not for drugs, but for kidney and bodily function, they check for proteins because they're concerned if you have a high level. And then people are like, I don't know why I ended up with CKD, chronic kidney disease. I'm like, because you fucking, your body is eating itself. My God, eat some fucking fruit. Sorry, it drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy because it's like, if people would learn basic biological functions, and now they might not be basic, but learning how hormones and things happen in your body, they would not fall victim to people who are you know eating a piece of fruit will kill you. They wouldn't fall victim to whatever health trend is happening, whatever's being pushed is happening, would be far less possible of taking you over if you're that's not how that works, right? No, don't get me wrong. I don't live off of processed sugar or anything like that. I love meat, but I also think that fruit's pretty fucking good, and I would be super sad if I couldn't eat squash, right? Or any of that stuff. But it just obviously it depends on the body and things like that. So I've been rambling and jabbering for about 47 minutes now, so I'm gonna hop off and get the rest of my day going. But if you would like to support my capacity to trip over myself, to be a real human, to keep a roof over my head and tea in my pot, consider becoming a member. It's just a way to throw me a couple bucks a month. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. You do get access to videos early as I'm able to upload them. Depending on how busy I am, you'll get them a few days early before everybody else. And starting as of last Sunday, you do get access to a members only Q&A. But again, if you can't afford to, I don't want you to worry about it because I'm going to release the members Q&A videos too. Right, so you can still take in and watch the information. You can also check out my apothecary. There's all my books, supplements. There's something for everybody. And you can use the one-time code TEATIME, TEATIME, to save 10% off of anything you'd like to call home from the shop. If you can't do any of that, or even if you can, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, and share. Sharing is super important because it helps get my work out there, helps people realize they're smart enough to do this. It's just a major way that you can support me, even if you can't financially support what I do. It's just a huge help. So thank you so much for watching, folks, and I'll see you members on Sunday. Bye.